Hello, friends. It's Hank, your pajama scholar, with an AGR at 7:30. And it wasn't really supposed to be an AGR. I realized once I started to put some notes on my whiteboard that some principles that I just wanted to expand on for the sake of simplicity so people can be prepared for whatever the future brings in a very logical, orderly fashion, so they don't ever really have to fear if they've addressed these principles. And I started to realize that just the first principle, to love thy neighbor, to know thy neighbor, was something that actually required probably an entire segment all of its own. But first, I wanted to register a complaint, which is to essentially illustrate an absurdity. And it goes a little something like this. Totally true story. There's a website that you can sign up for, Care.com. And I believe that as AGRs have progressed, I've vocalized my desire, my willingness to participate in the community and the way to provide care for others, whether it be for the elderly or whether it be for animals. As long as I have the choice to refuse that care, like I'm not taking on any clients just for the money. I won't take on a specific animal just for the money. I won't take on a specific person for money. I don't see this as an exercise in something that I see to be something that I'm seeking a great deal of profit in. It's not an exercise in profit, it's an exercise in something that is required spiritually for not only the solidarity of the community, but a solidarity for my spiritual self and willingness to interact with the community, my desire to do something that's worthwhile. Well, there's a site called Care.com where you fill out like this little profile or something. And I put in something very, very simple. Just looking for people within 5 miles or so forth that would, need to have an animal or something looked after during the day. Because as you know, I'm the pajama scholar. I've basically attempted to take more of a hermetic lifestyle as best as I can in order to preserve my passions and preserve my thought and offer protest against things that I thought were immoral. To record some thoughts as history moves along, and it requires sometimes, what Emerson did. It was, the transcendentalist philosophy is one of kind of a hermetic sort of a tradition of isolation. But every once in a while, I feel that it's necessary to come down from the mountaintop and, interact a little bit, to be human among humans. And so I fill out this little profile, and they send me back this thing that said something like, "We reserve the right." Well, God bless you too, farmer. Thank you for the comment. They reserve the right to refuse anybody that wanted to work for their service or something of that nature, which I thought was absolutely patently absurd, because I don't think that there are very many people that are as uniquely qualified to care for an animal in this type of environment for the service that I was offering I think they would be few and far between. I mean, given the fact that I have access to a 24-hour emergency hospital, access to a veterinary nurse, done more than, grew up on a farm, familiar with all different types of animals, trained all different types of dogs. My fish swim in better water than I drink. My birds are all very well cared for. Basically, my main thing would be predicated on whether or not that animal that I would be looking after during the day or whatever would be disruptive to my own household, my own sense of security and security for my animals, within my home. So I would absolutely reserve the right to refuse. So two things were absurd to me. One, that I was refused the opportunity, at least, to create the contacts necessary through this service, which I found to be kind of bizarre. I don't have a criminal record. My work history is fairly well documented. I've had to pass many, many background checks for different types of work that I've done, and just the mere responsibility that it takes to go through things like guardianship, or participate in any sort of financial services work, stuff like that. You have to be fingerprinted. You have to go through all the background checks and things like that. So I find it very curious that this particular service would deny. So that's absurdity. An absurdity. Now, what I found also to be absurd was that I was asking for less than anything that was like the minimum rates for dog walking and looking after animals was like, shockingly to me, like $14 an hour or something, which I was to think any person that was working during the day would have to make in excess of $30 an hour to be able to give half of that away and still be able to maintain their lifestyle for somebody that was just to look after their animal during the day. Found it shocking. So there was no way that I was going to charge that much money. I was more interested. And if one of my members of my community living out here that, had to go to work and they didn't want to leave their animal or puppy or whatever at home alone. They want it to be trained. They want it to be looked after, or maybe it's sick. And they could go off to work and not be concerned, pick it up in the afternoon. And it wouldn't cost them very much. I looked, basically only for something to cover my own expenses and perhaps get a gift for someone, or find some way to make repairs to things that need to be repaired, or use that money in order to engage the community in a greater way. Some way to reinvest whatever was brought. So just to find the minimum rates to be just so absurd, I said I scaled it all the way down to the bare minimum of what I thought what was possible in this service, which was something like $9. But I would specifically analyze these things on a case-by-case basis, assess the needs of the person that is requesting aid. I don't believe that the financial aspect of that is the only aspect. I would not take $50 an hour for an animal I didn't want in my home for a person that I didn't care to help. Period. It's not about the money. So, for whatever reason, a company does not want a person like that. I think. I don't know why, whatever their mysterious reasons are, that I'm refused the ability to participate in their service. Nor do I particularly care. I just find it absurd. Now, the point that I wanted to try and illustrate a little bit more, as far as what is one of the most basic things, basic actions of preparedness that's most valuable to your own survival in any situation, is to know your neighbors and to love your neighbors. And it's pretty much on that whiteboard there behind me. I was going to go into great detail and explain all these aspects, but I just want to point out a few things. One of my favorite people, and this is a stereotype, one of my favorite stereotypes anywhere I've lived, one of my favorite people has always been that sour old woman that everybody calls like, oh, she's just they call her terrible things, terrible names. I don't think they need to be repeated. But the sour old lady is one of my favorite people because she's direct. You know where you stand with her. All young men, I think, I know this just from me, we have a tendency to push to see what we can get away with. And if you let small things slide, where you don't confront things in a direct fashion, then it's kind of like a garden that doesn't get weeded. The garden becomes full of weeds because you let these things go. So what's wrong with the vigilant lady that's going to come out and say specifically, I saw you the other day, you didn't pick up your dog shit out here. I watched you. You let it go. And I thought to myself, yeah, I did. I let it go. And I thought to myself, I don't want dog shit all over the lawn. I don't want other people to do what I did. So, not only did I pick up my dog shit, but I made sure that the entire area, there would be no dog shit there at all. If I saw dog shit on it, I'm picking it up. So you can stride across that piece knowing that there's no dog shit to step in. I'll wear flip-flops at night and walk across it just to prove and stomp that I've looked carefully and there's no dog shit there. So I take the risk. More comfortable taking the risk. And when other people see that, they don't want to leave dog shit out there either, because they look at it and they go, this is a guy that picks up other people's dog shit. So the very least I can do is pick up my own dog shit. And there is the vigilant lady who's watching, who knows who picks up whose dog shit, who does what, when, and why they do it. And that keeps, because that is the standard that is set. That's the beginning point. It doesn't get any further than that. And then for whatever oddities that I have, that can be tolerated, because I'm a creature of the night. I'll go out and look at the moon and the stars and splash around in the puddles and look up into the sky. But in those activities, everybody knows that all the vehicles on my block, there's nothing that's going to be broken into, because none of it's left unattended. The thing about what I think a lot of people have begun to miss, begun to fail to understand, is about ownership only in title. To say that that's my car, that's your car, that's my house, that's your house. This is all true. But when you have respect for your neighbor's property as if it were your own, there is no dominion on beauty. There's no dominion on security. There's no dominion on peace and resolution and ease and the way that you live with one another. Those are things that can't be bought. They can't be sold. So while the object itself, the ownership, the title, does not belong to you, everything in your sight, in a sense, belongs to you. But it also belongs to everyone else within their sight. And therefore, you don't claim dominion over beauty, you maintain it. And it creates a wonderful environment. It's active and open participation. And dispute resolutions become so much easier. Like, say, for example, there's always a level of tolerance. There's always a level of understanding and forgiveness, so that if I get too deep into the cups and my music gets too loud, or I'm not paying attention to what day it is, other people have to go to work at certain times. Other people don't have a liberty of schedule. And it's selfish of me, but I forget sometimes myself, especially when I get deep into the cups, about what I should or should not be doing. I lose perspective about what is respectful. So it's very easy for my neighbors just to simply come to me. I haven't made these mistakes in quite some time, but it's very simple for them to come to me and just knock on the door and say, knock that shit off. And then I feel so bad, my ass is basically smarting so hard from just having it mentioned to me. I feel very responsible. I make sure that it's kept within check. And then other people in the proper times are able to enjoy the same types of liberty in the evenings in the areas that we find it all permissible. And then sometimes if I'm working or recording or doing something, sometimes I go, I wish they wouldn't. And then I think to myself, well, if I want to have the liberty to do that, I'm going to have to just suck it up and excuse it, because they've chosen the proper time to do it. Far be it from me to complain. I'll enjoy the fact that they're enjoying themselves. And I take pride, and I'm happy, and I'm pleased that they're enjoying themselves to the fullest extent they can. It's not like an issue of something that's being done every day. It's not insulting. We're not trying to dominate one another. We're trying to find a way that we can live together in the most wonderful, easy, enjoyable way possible. And this step in preparation is the first step in preparation. To know your neighbor, to love your neighbor, to know who their family members are, where they came from, what languages do they speak, what are their needs, what are their loves, how can you help them, can you carry the groceries for them, do they have pets? Be willing to conversate, and when you're willing to conversate, they're willing to teach. I always have a deep suspicion of the person that walks through my neighborhood and doesn't wave, doesn't smile, not willing to come forward to me and shake my hand. And then I'll take note of who that person is. Vigilance is very key. With vigilance, you have security. You don't really need to escalate your level of security if you're vigilant. For the most part, thieves are creatures of products of opportunity, often need an opportunity. So keep that to a minimum with charity and vigilance. Now, you never want to go too far. I mean, there's always a limit. What is your threshold? Your threshold is your doorway, because your home is your castle. So that's where your barrier is the threshold of your doorway. And to help carry something in for somebody, to help somebody, move a piece of furniture or carry in a box, that's one thing. But, to be inviting people over and, making dinner or whatever these things, I would strongly caution against that. I would strongly advise even the most charitable of spirit to keep their own counsel, so you don't provide opportunity for people that are either desperate or, by extension, people that you don't know, because maybe your neighbors have contact with people that are less reputable or less honorable than you know your neighbors to be. You basically want to minimize your exposure to risk while still being as charitable as possible. There's more that I could go on about this subject, but I thought that I would just illustrate an absurdity to get an AGR out today before I start to do a little fallout, because it'll be fun out there in the glowing sea. So it's been Hank, your pajama scholar. Catch you guys on the flip side. Well, if I can find my cursor. There we go.